Today, we speak of one of the greatest anomalies in the modern automotive world, a mechanism that defies every law of marketing, fashion, and time itself. A machine not built for glossy magazine covers, yet one that has outlasted the fall of empires. A vehicle that doesn't scream about its owner's social status, but remains standing long after other machines have crumbled into helpless scrap metal. Toyota Land Cruiser. Dwell on that name for a moment. To many, it is merely a status symbol, never leaving the pristine pavement of wealthy suburbs or corporate parking lots. But for the rest of the world, it is something far greater. It is a survival tool. It is a tank in civilian clothing, forged with Japanese precision. You don't buy it to impress your neighbors. You buy it to ensure you arrive. And it truly does not matter where the suffocating, impenetrable jungles of the Amazon, the searing 50-degree heat of the Sahara, the active combat zones of the Middle East, or the frozen end of the world in Antarctica. This vehicle did not become a legend by accident. It wasn't willed into cult status by marketers in clean, air-conditioned offices. It was made legendary by mud-caked soldiers, exhausted Red Cross doctors, Australian cattle station owners, geologists searching for oil, and war itself. This is the story of a machine that was always prepared for the worst-case scenario, and that is exactly why it outlived all its rivals. To understand this phenomenon of invincibility, we must rewind the clock to a time when leather interiors and climate control were nothing more than a fever dream. Born from the ashes, the history of the Land Cruiser does not begin with ambition. It begins with shame, defeat, and the desperate will of a nation to survive. The year is 1950. Japan lies in ruins following World War II. The economy is shattered, inflation is rampant, and industry is under the iron grip of U.S. occupation forces. Toyota is on the brink of bankruptcy, workers are on strike, and the future looks bleak. But in June 1950, war erupts on the nearby Korean peninsula. This event changes the course of history. American military forces based in Japan realized they desperately needed light, mobile reconnaissance vehicles. They needed them in massive quantities, and they needed them immediately. Shipping classic Willis Jeeps across the Pacific was too slow and too expensive. The U.S. turned to Japanese factories with a direct order: build them here. Fast. For Toyota, this was a lifeline, but the task was daunting. Create a prototype capable of competing with the legendary Willis MB, a vehicle with an impeccable wartime reputation. The Japanese had no time for new platforms or complex engineering. They chose the path of raw, almost primitive strength. Engineers created a Frankenstein's monster. They took the rugged chassis of a 1-ton Type SB truck and mated it with a massive, heavy 3.4-liter Type B petrol engine, a 6-cylinder beast producing 85 horsepower, which was astronomical compared to the 60 horsepower of the Willis. All of this was paired with a leaf spring suspension as simple as a hammer, borrowed from the Toy Pit truck. In January 1951, the Toyota BJ rolled out of the factory gates. The designation was simple: B for the engine type, J for Jeep. It was crude, awkward, and heavy. It didn't even have a low-range transfer case. Toyota's engineers were so confident in the engine's massive torque that they decided the truck could climb any mountain in first gear alone. But the U.S. military and Japan's National Police Reserve were skeptical. The Willis is proven in blood. Who are you? You were making pots and pans yesterday, was the prevailing sentiment. The miracle at Mount Fuji. Toyota needed a feat of strength. It was delivered by test pilot Ichiro Tera. In July 1951, he took the BJ prototype to the sacred Mount Fuji. He didn't take the road. He drove straight up the slopes. Imagine the scene. A small, open-top machine clawing its way through slippery volcanic ash and jagged rocks where, for centuries, only horses and monks had tread. Tera reached the 6th station of Mount Fuji, an altitude no wheeled vehicle in human history had ever reached. Upon seeing this, officials simply said, "Okay, this is serious. We'll take it." The Toyota BJ became the official patrol car of Japan. It was the first great victory. The machine was ready for battle, but a legal hurdle emerged: the name. The word Jeep was trademarked by Willis Overland. American lawyers politely but firmly suggested a change. In June 1954, technical director Hanji Omihara called an emergency meeting. He knew their main global competitor was no longer the Americans, but the British with their Land Rover. Land Rover sounded proud, imperial. Omihara uttered a phrase that went into the history books. "We have a strong competitor, the Land Rover. I need a name that sounds just as powerful, even stronger. A name for a machine that doesn't just rove the land, but dominates it." Thus, the Land Cruiser was born, a battleship that had come ashore. The legend of the 40 and the Australian test. Evolution gathered pace. First came the 20 series, making the vehicle slightly more civilized. But the true explosion occurred in 1960 with the debut of the 40 series. Visualize it, the silhouette everyone knows. The boxy shape, the separate front fenders, the signature round headlights, and the iconic white roof. That roof wasn't for style. In the days before AC, the white paint reflected the desert sun, so the driver wouldn't bake alive. The folding windshield allowed for visibility or firing positions, and the small curved corner windows eliminated blind spots in mountain passes. Under the hood sat the legendary F-Series straight-six engines. By modern standards, they were terrible. They gulped fuel and roared with noise. But they possessed a magical quality. They could run on any quality of fuel, even solvent, and could operate for decades without an overhaul. The 40 became a global phenomenon, but its harshest testing ground was Australia. There, amidst the red dust and infinite horizons, a proverb was born that became the brand's unofficial slogan. If you want to go into the outback, take a Land Rover. If you want to come back out, take a Land Cruiser. This wasn't marketing. It was the cold statistics of survival for miners and farmers for whom a breakdown in the desert meant certain death. The split, comfort versus capability. As the world changed, Toyota realized people wanted to travel with their families. In 1980, the 60 series arrived, introducing air conditioning and power steering to the rugged platform. It was a vehicle you could use to take the kids to school in the morning and cross the Andes in the evening. In 1984, Toyota made a genius move. They split the Land Cruiser into two parallel universes. One path led toward luxury, the Prado and the 100-200 series, while the other remained the heavy-duty workhorse. Thus, the 70 series was born. Here is a staggering fact. This machine is still officially produced and sold today. Over 40 years on the assembly line. The world has changed beyond recognition. The Soviet Union collapsed, the internet was born, we carry supercomputers in our pockets. Yet the 70 series still rolls out of the factory, as ironclad and simple as ever. Why? Because there is no substitute. It is an uncompromising off-roader, a ladder-frame chassis, immortal diesel engines like the 1HZ that can clock 1,000,000 kilometers without electronics, and an interior you can wash out with a hose. They work in gold mines a kilometer underground and save lives in the Ukrainian steppes. A military medic under fire doesn't care about Apple CarPlay. He cares that the engine starts. And the 70 series always starts. The Toyota War. There's an unwritten rule of geopolitics. If a war breaks out anywhere in the world, a Land Cruiser will be there first, often before the CNN journalists. This reached its peak in 1987 during the conflict between Libya and Chad, now known to history as the Toyota War. On one side, the Libyan army with T-55 tanks and heavy artillery. On the other, the impoverished army of Chad, equipped with 400 Toyota Land Cruiser pickups. The Chadians turned their pickups into desert ships, mounting machine guns and anti-tank missiles in the beds. A miracle occurred. The Toyotas screamed across the desert at 100 kilometers per hour, never bogging down in the sand. They flanked the lumbering tanks, struck them, and vanished into clouds of dust. Libya lost 1/10 of its army and hundreds of tanks. Chad won because of the Toyota, the peak of engineering. In 1990, the 80 series arrived. Many experts still consider it the pinnacle of Land Cruiser evolution, the perfect balance between tank and limousine. It kept the solid axles, but introduced coil springs for a legendary ride quality. This was followed by the 100 series in 1998, which introduced the indestructible 2UZF V8 engine, a motor known to exceed 2 million kilometers of service. By 2007, the 200 series brought high technology. Systems like crawl control and KDSS allowed the vehicle to dig itself out of sand traps or handle like a much smaller car on the highway. The 200 became a symbol of power and confidence. Its greatest strength? Resale value. The market knows that after 5 years, the life of this machine has barely begun. The secret of QDR. What is the secret? Why does a Land Cruiser last 30 years when others fall apart in 7? It lies in the company's standard: QDR, quality, durability, reliability. While modern cars are designed for a 10-year per 250,000 kilometers life cycle, the Land Cruiser is engineered for 25 years and 500,000 kilometers in extreme conditions. This margin of safety is built into the thickness of the frame, the gauge of the wiring, and the protection of every connector. Each engine is inspected by Takumi masters, the elite of Japanese industry, who can hear a wrong vibration or feel a surface deviation of less than a micron. Before any new model is launched, prototypes are sent to Australia to drive the washboard roads. Corrugations so violent they literally vibrate other SUVs to pieces. The Land Cruiser endures this for months. The last dinosaur. In 2021, the 300 series arrived. The V8 is gone, replaced by V6 twin-turbos due to emissions laws. Purists grumbled, but the vehicle is lighter, stiffer, and just as capable. The waiting lists are 4 years long because a world moving toward disposable electric gadgets is desperate to grab the last living dinosaur of the internal combustion age. The Toyota Land Cruiser is more than just metal on 4 wheels. It is a symbol of an era that is fading, an era when things were made for eternity, not just until the warranty expired. It is not perfect. It gulps fuel, it's heavy, and in a tight European city, it looks like an elephant in a china shop. But the world is becoming less stable. Wars, disasters, crises. We do not know what tomorrow brings. We don't know if there will be power, signal, or roads. But we know one thing. If you turn the key in a Land Cruiser in the middle of chaos, it will start. It will carve a path where there is none. It will carry you and your family to safety. It is the ultimate anti-flex. Its design doesn't age because function never goes out of style. If our fragile digital world ever truly collapses, if the internet dies, the asphalt crumbles, and the service centers close forever, there's a high probability that the last machine still moving across the ruins of civilization will be an old, battered, scratch-covered, but very much alive Toyota Land Cruiser. Respect this machine. It earned its place in history, not on a pedestal under spotlights, but in the mud, in hard labor, and in the heat of battle.